of this 2009 Pontiac G3 with a 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine. As you may remember, we did a compression test and a leak down test on these cylinders, and it was evident that air could get into your cooling system. Therefore, we suspect the cylinder to have a bad head gasket. That's why we're going to remove it. Now, I've already removed the spark plugs and the ignition coils, and in order to do that, all we had to do was to pop this cover loose like this, and then here's look at the connector for our ignition coils. Just press down on this, pull this out, and then our ignition coils were held in by these two bolts that are going to require a T40 torque socket. And then all it takes is some wiggling and your ignition coils should come out. And next we'll remove our battery terminal connectors. First the negative or the ground side, and then the positive side. There we go. And next I'm actually going to remove this battery to make more room here. On yours there's going to be a bracket that's holding this in. Removing that should be pretty easy, probably just 2 bolts on the sides. But it's missing on ours, so we're just going to yank this out of here. By the way, if you see any tools that I'm using on this job that you might be interested in, like these guys, I'll put a link to them in the description box down below. Alright, next I'm going to remove our air filter box with this mass sensor and this air tube still attached. So we're going to basically remove it from down there. If you want to do that, you need to unscrew that little bolt that's for a clamp that attaches this air hose to our throttle body. Use a screwdriver or a 6mm socket with an extension like I'm doing here. Alright, it should be plenty loose. Alright, next we need to remove this filter housing, and this guy is held in by 3 bolts that I can see as of right now. One 10mm bolt down there, and then there are 2 10mm bolts back here. And then we should be able to pull this out of here. So we're just gonna lift up on this end and twist this so it breaks from the throttle body, and then pull, and it should come out. Alright, next we're gonna raise and support the front of the car on jack stands. Just make sure your emergency parking brakes are on, and also your car is in gear if it's a manual. And next, in order to get to our timing belt covers and all that good stuff, we're gonna have to remove our right front wheel. You don't really have to remove the driver's side wheel, nor even do you have to raise the driver's side, but I'm going to do it so I can get more light in there so you guys can see what's going on inside underneath the engine. But also it helps because the engine is going to be even this way. Alright, next we're going to remove this timing belt cover. This timing belt cover is held in by these 2 fasteners up top. And then these 2 guys on the bottom. There's the culprit. Alright, next we're going to remove our power steering pump belt. But believe it or not, on this engine, this power steering pump belt does not have a tensioner mechanism, or a tensioning mechanism rather. I think according to the book, you're supposed to get a socket on the pulley and then get a pry bar and press the belt out as you're turning the pulley. But we're going to try to find a different way to take this belt off. Alright, so it looks like this back of the power steering pump is attached to the water pump on the bottom by that bolt, and up top to this bracket by this. So what I'm going to try to do is actually take that bolt out and loosen this, and then we should be able to pivot this whole thing forward and be able to get this belt out. And this bottom one is going to be a 12mm. There we go. Next I'm just going to loosen this one. Alright, you know what? There's actually another bolt underneath the power steering pump that bolts into the what looks like to be the water pump, or the bracket for the water pump. And in order to get to that, it looks like we're going to have to remove this passenger side headlight. And this guy is held in place, looks like by 4 bolts. 2 up top here, another one down there, and another one here on the back side. And then we just pop it on the side. Then it should come out. Alright, next we'll undo our connectors. one. And here's the headlight one. This one's gonna be a little bit more stubborn. Oh, there's one more. There we go. 3 in total. So you don't forget, keep all the bolts that you removed in order to remove the headlight with the headlight. Alright, I give up. You really can't get to that bolt from underneath there, or at least I don't have the right combination of sockets and adapters to get to it. So we're just going to go the factory way. So you'll need a 3/8 Allen socket. And then you put that on a long ratchet, install it inside the power steering pump pulley. Next, as you're turning the power steering pump, you're supposed to use a pry bar and push this over this pulley. But, you know, I'm going to have to rest this against this upper timing belt cover, which is probably going to damage it. So I'm actually going to first try to push this over by hand, see how that goes. There, I got it. You gotta watch your fingers too. Alright, looks like we just might be able to push this off, at least most of the way. Now we can try a pry bar or a screwdriver and get it off. Hopefully the rest of the way. There we go. Putting this back on is going to be fun. Also, if these belts are in good shape, they got no cracks or no tears, you're going to reuse them. You want to mark the rotation in which they're turning with a Sharpie or something, so you put them back on the same exact way. Alright, so next I was going to go ahead and start removing the timing belt covers and the timing bolts and all the components, but in order to do that, we would have to remove this mounting or motor mount, and if you remove that, we're going to have to support the engine, put a jack or jack stand underneath this engine to support it before we can remove it. And that's going to be in the way when we go to remove our exhaust manifold and maybe even our intake manifold. So I'm actually going to remove the exhaust manifold first, then go on from there. So we're going to first start with removing this shield. This is held in place by that one bolt that also attaches the bracket for oil dipstick tube, and also that bolt. And these are going to require a 12mm socket. Let's see if we can remove our oil dipstick tube. No, it's probably another bolt down lower that's holding it in place. But we're also going to remove this bolt that we loosened earlier, because this bolt is also attaching this power steering pump to this bracket, which is attached to our cylinder head. So we have to disconnect these two from each other. And this is also a 12mm. Alright, next we'll remove this connector for our O2 sensor. You just have to press down on this little tab on the side and pull out on this. It should come out without much fuss. Alright, next in order to remove the splash shield, we're going to have to loosen 2 more bolts down there. This is going to be 10mm. One you can see right there, and the other one right across. These might be easier for you to get from the bottom, but I have these guys, so I'm going to get them from up top. You know, this second one, we might have to get from the bottom anyway. Alright guys, so now we're underneath the car. Here's a look at the bolts that we need to remove in order to remove this shield for our exhaust manifold. We'll also remove these 3 nuts that are holding our exhaust manifold to our exhaust pipe, and also our oil dipstick tube down here. It doesn't look like it's secured in place by another bolt, so we're just going to go up top and yank it out after we remove all these bolts. There's this guy, and these guys are going to be 14mm. There. We're also going to remove this connector for our downstream O2 sensor, so that when we remove this manifold, this doesn't dangle off this wire and damage it, okay? Same process, just press down on this clip and pull this out. Alright, back up top, I'm going to see if we can pull this oil dipstick tube and hose out. There we go. We'll try to fish out this splash shield, see if that's possible. Alright, looks like we need to remove this bracket altogether. Alright, let's try it now. Yeah, there we go. I just fish through this connector, that's it. And then we're going to keep all the nuts and bolts related to removing this thing with it. And we're going to put it on the ground. Alrighty, so in order to remove this exhaust manifold, looks like we need to remove 4 of these bolts or nuts on top, and then 5 on the bottom. There's one in that corner right there. And these are going to be 10 millimeter as well. Alright, now we're ready to pull this out of here with just the note. Some of these guys will come out with the stud, and some of these nuts will come out just by themselves. So just keep track of them, put them back the same way. It's no big deal. Alright, there are 2 more things holding this in place. We're going to need to get it from the bottom again. So here's a look at what we need to remove. There's going to be one on this side. This is the passenger side. And for these, you're going to need a female Torx socket, E12, 12 millimeter female Torx socket. And here's another one on the driver's side. I'm going to get this connector for our O2 sensor out of the way. Might have to remove this bracket as well. You know, this is going to come out, but in order to put this back in, I'm going to remove this cooling fan. Alright, so next we're going to go about removing our valve cover. In order to do that, we need to detach this wiring harness and all the connectors that go to all the different sensors back here. Then push that back, and also detach these connectors for variable valve timing. Push those back, get it off the valve cover. Then go ahead and remove these bolts around the circumference and the center of the valve cover. Then we should be able to pull this off. Now these connectors, some of them will come off pretty easy. You just press on a little tab and get them off. The other ones have a little safety clip. You'll need to push out first in order to get these connectors off. And then after you push the safety tab out, you press down on that, and then you pull the connector out. We're also going to remove this coolant hose while we're at it. We just press it on the sides and pull up. We'll obviously need to replace this one as this is half broken anyway. So just going to move down the line. And then we'll use a pair of needle nose pliers to get this wiring harness detached from this bracket back here. Go. Now we just pull up on this, and this comes loose. Looks like we have a ground cable attached to the cylinder head through this wiring harness, so we're going to remove that next. These are very important. Make sure you put them back when you go to put everything back together, okay? I'm just going to put it back on the cylinder head so I don't forget. Alright, next we'll switch over to this side of the valve cover. Then we're going to remove this connector. Again, pull out on this safety tab, press down, pull. Alright, this wiring harness continues from here. It looks like it goes down here to our oil pressure sensor, and also further down to our AC compressor clutch. So we're going to have to disconnect those connectors and then fish this through so we can get it out of here. Probably won't be able to get you guys a close shot, but you guys get the right idea. So there's that. Alright, now we're just going to fish these out, and the AC compressor wire, yeah, you're going to have to get it from the bottom. Alright, looks like this wiring harness, there's another clamp down there that's holding in place, so we're going to remove this lower radiator hose, which we'll have to do anyway in order to drain our coolant. Not that there's much coolant in this car, in this engine. But anyway, we're going to loosen that clamp, pull that out, set that aside, then get to that clamp that's holding this wiring harness in, and then get this out of here. Alright, get your catch man ready. There we go. Now that we can get this wiring harness out of here, we don't have to worry about working around it, you know. It'll be a lot easier, but it was a pain in the ass getting this out. Alright, next we remove this connector for the other side of our variable valve timing. And then we pull up on this. And now we can see all the bolts that are holding this valve cover in. So we're going to remove them, pull this valve cover off. These are going to require an E10 female Torx socket. Alright, I think that's it. It was 11 in total. So now we're just going to pull this guy off. There's actually a PCV hose that we need to remove back here. Alright, here's a look at the PCV hose that's attached to this valve cover. Looks like we just have to pull out this clamp and lock it in place here. Then we'll be able to just push this out. There we go. Now we should be able to get this out. Alright guys, so here's a close look at our cylinder head. We got some of that coolant residue all over this as expected. This is our exhaust camshaft. If you're wondering, this is our exhaust camshaft sensor. There's another one for our intake sensor. These are going to be our cylinder head bolts. Looks like there's 5 of them. This up here is our variable valve timing. There are 2 solenoids, looks like, one for each camshaft. Alright, so the game plan from here is to go back there and see if we can remove that intake manifold from the cylinder head, and the timing stuff, then the cylinder head bolts, and then yank this out. But we're going to save that for episode 2, and when that episode is ready, I'll put a link to it right here on this side of the screen that you can click on. There'll also be a link in the description box down below as well. And once again, if you found any tools or products used in this video that you found interesting, I'll put a link to them in the description box down below for you to check out. Alright, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.